Dear student, welcome to my online maths class. Today I am going to discuss some other types of angles like adjacent angles, consecutive angles and linear pair. In my previous video I discussed about some other types of angles like acute angle, then right angle, obtuse angle, straight angle, reflex angle and complete angle. So these are angles on the basis of degree measure. And we also discuss some other types of angles by drawing two parallel lines and one transversal line. And I show that the 8 angles are formed, and the names are like alternate interior angles, alternate exterior angles, then vertically opposite angles, corresponding angles, and interior angles on the same side of the transversal, and how they are become equal, like alternate angles are equal, then corresponding angles are always equal. But for this, always the two lines must be parallel. That one I discussed in my previous video, and today I will discuss one by one these three types of angles: adjacent angles, consecutive angles, and linear pair. So students always confused about adjacent angles and consecutive angles. So what is the difference between adjacent angles and consecutive angles? We'll discuss it elaborately. So for this, let me draw a quadrilateral ABCD. So ABCD is a quadrilateral in which the angles are angle A, angle B, angle C and angle D. So if we observe it carefully, then we can see that angle A and angle B, these two angles having a common side AB, and these angles are next to each other. So these two angles are called consecutive angles. So these are consecutive angles. In the similar way, A and D also consecutive, D and C also consecutive, and B and C are consecutive because they have common side and the angles are next to each other. Now, what is adjacent angles? In case of adjacent angles, let me draw another figure. Suppose, so in this figure, here it is clear that two angles are formed, these two angles. So these two angles, what is the property of these two angles, and we can say what is the condition to form these two angles. Here it is very clear that in these two angles one common side is there, or we can say one common arm. So if we name it, we can name it, suppose it is O, then here it is A, then B and C. So here angle you can see AOB, one angle is there, then BOC, another angle is there, and these two angles having one common side and one common vertex, which is not there in the adjacent angles. So this is the main difference between adjacent angles and consecutive angles. For adjacent angles, one common vertex is must and one common arm or side is must. And in case of consecutive angles, the angles must be next to each other and one common side is there. So common vertex in case of adjacent and one common side in case of consecutive angles. So these are difference between adjacent and consecutive angles. So I hope you can understand. Now we'll discuss linear pair. What is linear pair? So for linear pair, let me draw another figure. So in case of linear pair, let me draw a line, and from any point let me draw a ray. So we can name also here, suppose the line is AB and it is O, and let it be C. So here AB is a straight line and OC is a ray. Now it is clear that this OC formed two angles. One angle is COB and another angle is AOC. So these two angles, we know that the straight angle, in my previous video also, we defined a straight angle. So what is the measure of straight angle? So the measure of straight angle is 180 degree. So you can see that this OC, this ray OC, divide this straight angle in two angles. Divide it in two angles. So these two angles, the sum of these two angles must be 180 degree, and these two angles must be adjacent. So this is the condition for making linear pair. So in linear pair, the two angles must be adjacent, and the sum of these two angles must be 180 degree. So we can say these two angles are linear pair. Suppose in case of another example, let me show you. Suppose in a quadrilateral, suppose it is 90 degree and that one also 90 degree. Suppose these two angles are 90 degree. So these two angles also gives us, the sum of these two angles also gives us 180 degree, but these two angles are not linear pair. So you can understand that for linear pair, it must be adjacent. It is not possible if they are opposite or if they are consecutive. For linear pair, the two angles must be adjacent and the sum of these two angles must be 180 degree. So I hope you can understand. So thank you for watching my video.